The tree of liberty is a wonderful metaphor for the flowering nature of a society that embraces and supports individual liberty. Through this channel, I will lay out the structure of this liberty to the best of my ability. It's worth noting that regardless of how well we articulate this vision, there exists an ideal version of a civil society that we're unlikely to see anywhere in the world. Be that as it may, we should begin with a few of the root principles that often lay below the surface of discourse, but must be clearly understood in order for the tree to grow at all. We start our discussion with a few of the core truths about individual liberty as laid out in the Bible, Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution. I would argue that every single disagreement regarding civil liberties and societal structure come down to a disagreement or misunderstanding of the rights and obligations laid out here. I will frame each of these discussions through the lens of American politics and civil society. It is important to stipulate that I firmly believe that the human race is comprised of individuals who are essentially identical in nature, capability, and worth. Regardless of our individual circumstances, lineage, or ethnicity, we are each of us children of God, and that common ancestry should override the other relatively trivial differences. From this source material, I make the following axiomatic statements. The rights set forth and protected in the founding documents apply to American citizens. These rights are the divine birthright of each person living on the earth, and foreign governments trample these rights at their peril. But the American founding documents enshrine rights and protections into the law that are essentially applicable only to its citizens. As these rights are divine in origin, it is an illegitimate function of government to restrict these rights, except for clearly prescribed circumstances and after carefully weighing the costs of those restrictions. No trade-off is without a cost. Anyone who's telling you otherwise is selling you something. There are three general categories of people who attempt to discuss these core principles. Some people argue about these principles without thinking them all the way through. I know from personal experience you can waste a lot of energy and a lot of time being upset if you try and debate in good faith with someone who's unwilling to put in the effort to rationalize their position. I would advise against ostracizing someone in this state. Most people mature in their understanding eventually. Bridge to them as best you can and show that you value them regardless of your level of agreement. Some people argue about these principles for an ulterior motive, pursuit of political or personal power, ill-gotten gains, sex, drugs, fame, etc. No matter what they're pursuing, they won't argue in good faith, but instead seek to try and pursue their own personal agenda. The remainder are good people who, through varied life experiences, mental acuity, and effort, have created a personal framework where they've balanced these principles against each other in a workable way. I believe this is the category that most of us belong to. This means that most of these discussions are between well-meaning people who sometimes seek to share expensive truths they've learned in an effort to help themselves, a loved one, or society at large improve. I believe these conversations are fundamentally good and worthwhile. As with most worthwhile pursuits, they are strenuous and fraught with peril. Many a professional career, spousal, or family relationship lays shattered on these rocks. Here's the area where I seek to help. Okay, if you've come with me this far, we can begin to tackle a recent event that has some very dark foreshadowing to it. The broad banning or deplatforming effort to remove Alex Jones from social media. I'm experimenting with the best way to present these events, so bear with me while we work on formatting. Alex Jones, in case you don't know, is a political commentator and provocateur with a large following on social media and directly through his own website. For the record, I think he's at least a little crazy and jumps far too easily from the absence of evidence to the presence of conviction. I would even go so far as to say that some of his positions personally disgust me. For instance, in the wake of the Sandy Hook shooting, he claimed that the government had fabricated the event and the parents who were on film grieving for their dead children were crisis actors. In May of 2019, Alex Jones was banned within a few days from Facebook, Twitter, and essentially every other major social media platform. This event may feel like old news, but I feel that it holds within it the tension between some important major philosophical principles. As we mentioned earlier, in a properly functioning society, we create balance between competing principles by ranking them in relative priority. This balance always comes at a cost, and I want to use the banning of Alex Jones to shed some light on the larger issue of freedom of speech, especially in a society where freedom of speech relies on social media platforms provided by private companies. Since I'm doing this part-time, I'll be breaking up this analysis into several videos spread through the coming weeks. Hopefully by the end of this discussion we can understand why Alex Jones was banned, whether he'll be the last one banned for these reasons, and what the price of this deplatforming mentality will have on our broader society. Until then, thanks for watching, and thank you for thinking. Cheers.